What is going on, all you collecting maniacs out there? This is Ryan with the 40-year-old collector. So yesterday we talked about PSA graded rookie cards of future Hall of Famers. Today we're going to go way back, and we're going to look at PSA graded Hall of Fame rookie cards from players in the 30s and 40s. Now this is some of my favorite things to collect. I love vintage. I love the history of the game. And these are some of the foundational players which helped build the NFL into what it is today. So we're not only going to look at cardboard, we're going to talk about some of these players. We're going to talk about what made them great. There's some cool stories that go along with a lot of these guys. So I'm really excited to bring this video to you, not just to show you some awesome cardboard, but also to talk about the history of the game and these individuals. Of course, we'll talk population reports. I'm going to go into detail on which cards have what going on in them, and we'll do that. But as always, we have a whole lot to talk about, so let's get after it right now. All right, everybody, it is my favorite part of the day. It is slab time. So let's look at some of these amazing pieces of history and learn a little bit about the men that made them great. Kicking off our vintage journey right here, Mr. Doak Walker. All right, so this is a PSA 5. The first couple of these cards are going to be 1948 Leafs. So Mr. Walker, listen, he played 6 seasons in the NFL. He was a Pro Bowl selection for 5 of them. One of the cool things about him is if you look at his career chart, he has an entry in every possible statistical category, from passing to rushing to receiving, kick returning, even interceptions, right? When he was in Detroit, it was really the golden years for the Lions. Sad to say they haven't had many golden years since then. But, you know, they brought multiple divisional and NFL championships. So they really did some amazing stuff when Doak Walker was there with them. This is a PSA 5. Now, these 48 Leafs, there's a bunch of different background variants. So when I talk about populations throughout the rest of the video, I want you to know that the pop is for all of the different variants. So if it's black lettering, white lettering, red background, green background, whatever it is, when I talk about the variants, it takes all of them. It just says, hey, this is how many 1948 Leaf Doak Walker PSA 5s are in existence and how many higher are graded. So with that out of the way, the population for this one is 89 on a pop 5 with 112 graded higher. This card has really good eye appeal to me. Centering's off a little bit, but beautiful color, beautiful card. I'm not really looking to upgrade right now. Totally content with my 5. So very happy with this card. Great story. Doak Walker, amazing player. Next guy, I love it when they have their nicknames written on the card. Here we go, Mr. Bullet Bill Dudley. So one of the interesting things is you would think with a nickname like Bullet, Mr. Dudley would have been a blazer, right? Like the guy would have just left afterburners behind him. But that wasn't, that wasn't the case. Actually, he wasn't that fast at all if you look into the history of it. But his lack of speed didn't prevent him from being one of the most feared men in football on both sides of the ball. That's what I love about this era. All these guys are both way players. But one of the things that was different about him is back then most players played their entire career with one team, but he actually had 3 different 3-year stints. So he played with the Steelers, the Lions, and the Redskins. He did pause his career in 43 and 44 to serve in the Army during World War II. Again, just a testament to his greatness. But 6 of those 9 years, he was named first or second team All-Pro. He was also named to 6 All-Pros. This card's a PSA 6, so a 1948 Leaf and a PSA 6. Super thrilled with that, right? This has some really strong eye appeal. Overall, it's just a beautiful card. There's 57 other 6s out there, only 54 higher. This is one I'm never going to upgrade. This is a permanent one in my set. I'm happy with the 6. His name's beautifully displayed, Bullet Bill. The colors are great. It's got a little mark in the very top that's probably keeping it from a 7. But overall, just a beautiful card. Next one up here, Mr. Charlie Trippy. All right, so like outside of his amazing on-the-field accomplishments, which would come later, one of the first things that brought Charlie to prominence was he was one of the very first players to sign a really big contract. Okay, so here's what happened. Back then there were 2 leagues, an upstart All-American Football Conference, and then there was also the NFL. So the AAFC's New York Yankee football team, it still sounds weird for me to say that. Yes, there was a New York Yankee football team. And they were hot after Mr. Trippy coming out of college. They even had a press conference that announced his signing, right? But in a not-so-fast my moment, friend, the Chicago Cardinals sweeped in from the NFL, and they signed him to, at the time, an unheard of 4-year, $100,000 contract. Crazy money for back then, but they wanted him. They went out and they got him, and my God, did they get their nickels worth out of Mr. Charlie. So he spent 9 years there, and again, the player who did it all, right? Out of his 9 years, 5 of them he was a halfback, 2 he was a quarterback, and his final 2 years he just played defensive back. He was also their punter, and he excelled in the kick return game. One last cool story about Charlie, and I thought this was awesome. In the 1947 NFL Championship game, it was being played on a frozen field, literally a sheet of ice. Charlie, in his infinite wisdom, decided to wear basketball shoes instead of cleats to get better traction. In that game, he totaled over 200 all-purpose yards and a pair of scores, leading the Cardinals to victory. Awesome story. I love that one. So this card right here, it's a PSA 5. It's got a pop of 65 with 114 higher. The corners and centering on this card are absolutely awesome. There's a surface residue. I don't think the camera can pick it up because it's really faint, but right here along the top, there's some surface residue that's keeping it in this 5 holder. In my mind, it's eligible for an upgrade. You know, I could crack it and maybe try and get some of that residue off. But I'm a coward, so I don't know if I'm going to do that or not. But overall, this is absolutely a beautiful card. And we'll see what I end up doing with it in the long run. Next up is Mr. George Connor. Now, let me tell you a little bit about George Connor. So George played all 8 seasons with the Bears, and he was named All-NFL at, get this, 3 different positions. All right? Offensive tackle, defensive tackle, and linebacker. What's even more crazy is in 1952 and 1953, he was named All-NFL at both offensive and defensive tackle. So imagine that nowadays. Imagine Aaron Donald going both ways and earning first-team All-Pro at each position. It's crazy. Another cool thing about George is George was the first big man linebacker, and that wasn't by design. It was out of necessity. You see, the Eagles had a guy whose card we're going to talk about next, by the name of Steve Van Buren, and the Eagles were running all over the NFL. They were pulling 2 guards and sending Van Buren across the field, and nobody could stop this sweep that they were running. So the Bears coaches got together and they said, hey, why don't we take this big, fast, agile guy, Connor, move him to the linebacker position in an attempt to stop this, this freight train that was coming at him. Well, believe it or not, the experiment worked. The Eagles were defeated, and Connor, in turn, became a linebacker for the rest of his career, redefining not only himself, but really the linebacker position. Think about linebackers nowadays. They're big, they're fast, they're agile, and Connor was the first one to do that. So this card's a PSA 5. It's got a pop of 62 and 131 higher. The center and color on this card is dead on. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. Centering doesn't get much better in this 1948 set. The red really pops, the blue pops, the yellow pops. It's just a beautiful card. It does have a couple bum corners that's keeping it in a 5. Not eligible for a regrade. But I will probably keep this because I just love the overall card appeal. I buy cards, not slabs, by the way. I buy the beauty of the card, not the slab that it's in. All right, we were talking about him a minute ago. Why don't we just go ahead and finish up the conversation on Steve Van Buren. So what was cool about him is he had a couple different nicknames. One of them was Supersonic, one of them was Blockbuster, and my personal favorite was Wham Bam. Like, if that's not a 40s and 50s nickname, I don't know what is. So this guy rushed for over 1,000 yards twice in an era where they played only 10 games. He was first team All-NFL in each of his first 6 seasons. The guy won 2 rushing titles. He won 2 championships with the Eagles. But the cool thing about Steve is it's a story of perseverance. He was born and orphaned in Honduras. Somehow he made his way to New Orleans, where he would eventually live with his grandparents. At 125 pounds in his sophomore year of high school, he didn't even make the high school football team. However, put some weight on, made the team his junior and senior year, ended up winning a scholarship to LSU, and as they say, the rest is history. So had a great career with the Eagles. Guy did amazing things in the NFL, just a do-it-all runner. So this card's a PSA 5. It's got really bad centering. It's not uncommon for these 48 Leafs, which I've referred to a couple times, but this one's a little more askew than I'd like. The blue is really, really bold. The red looks really good. If it was just centered a little bit more, this card would easily be a 6. I think I will eventually look to upgrade this. The off-centering bothers me a bit. But for now, it's a great card. It's beautiful. Love the player. Thrilled to have it in my collection. So now we're going to move on to Mr. Bob Waterfield. Okay. So in 1945, Bob led the Rams to the NFL championship. He was named a unanimous All-Pro and was the first ever rookie to win at league MVP. All right, talk about a crazy way to start a career. So, cool thing about Bob, he was the first real precision passer in the league. So he was known for being able to put the ball anywhere, really at any time. He led the league in passing 2 different years, 46 and 51. He was also known as a comeback champion. He had this reputation of being really cool and calm under pressure, and it was not uncommon for him to lead his team back from late game victories when they fell behind. He was a first or second team All-Pro 5 different times, and long before the Rams were nicknamed the greatest show on turf, back in the 2000s. Bob and the Rams, they were the most feared offensive unit in the NFL at the time. So this is a PSA 5 here. Everything, and I mean everything about this card besides the corners, is PSA 8 plus material. The centering's on point. The coloring is absolutely stunning. It's a really crisp image of Bob. If I could just get some better corners on this one, this would be a big dollar card. But the corners aren't there. Happy to have it. It's a Pop 71, 157 higher. I see no need to upgrade it. I can deal with the bad corners because the card is just absolutely beautiful. All right, Mr. George McAfee. I love this picture because it's clearly of him punting, and that must have been one hell of a punt that he unleashed, because he is all in, full send on this card. One of the things about George, and this wasn't uncommon in that era, is he didn't make the Hall of Fame because of just one area of accomplishment. If you look at his stats overall, I looked at them, I was like, they're good, but they're not great. Like Hall of Good numbers, maybe not Hall of Great numbers or Hall of Fame numbers. But he made the Hall of Fame simply because he could do just that. He could do everything with the football. He was a breakaway runner. He was a deadly receiver. And he was known as one of the very best kick return specialists in the history of the game. Like, the guy was magnificent in the kick return game. Not to mention all of that, plus he had 25 career interceptions on defense in only 8 seasons. So he played for those famed Bears, legendary coach and founder George Halas. George Halas, they used to say that one of the best compliments Halas could give a player is if he compared the player to McAfee. That's high praise from one of the greatest coaches of all time, and certainly one of the legends of the game. So this is another card. I got really lucky on these run of 48s that I bought a long time ago. It's got beautiful, beautiful color. It's really in a 5 because of some corner wear, and it's slightly off center. It's a Pop of 60 with 156 rated higher, but someday I'll look to upgrade it. It's got a little bit of surface stuff along here like that other 48 one. I don't know if that's some gum residue or just the way it was stored all those years, but a pretty card. We'll see if I ever upgrade it. And now we're out of the 48 Leafs, and we're going to get into 2 different sets. I think this card is a stunner. Some people don't like them because they're black and white, but I love them. So Alex Wojciechowicz, I tried to pronounce that right. Thankfully, his nickname was Woj, and I will respectfully call him Woj for the rest of this. So he started off his fame because he was a member of Fordham University's 7 Blocks of Granite. If you don't know anything about it, look it up. It's a really cool story about the offensive line that Fordham had for a while. But really, his legend only continued to grow in the NFL. Like, he played an incredible, unheard of back then, 13 NFL seasons, and he was one of the last Ironmen to play. He played both center and linebacker through all 13 seasons. And one of the things I liked when I was doing a lot of research on him is he was obviously bestowed with all of these personal accolades, but he was known for only wanting one thing in his career, and that was for a championship. In 1946, towards the end of his career, he was traded to the Eagles mid-season, and they say that you could see the revitalization in him. You could see how pumped he was and how dedicated he became, and he was just a man on a mission. He immediately became a nucleus of that defense, which in turn helped bring 2 championships to that squad, fulfilling a dream of his. So, one of the best quotes about Woj that I saw was, from the time he was drafted and the time he retired, he was a player's player, a well-liked man, and one of the best the game has seen. What more could be said about a man? That's amazing. So this is a PSA 6 example. As I said, I love these black and white Bowman cards. I think the black and white helps capture more detail and the depth of the time, and it really, really looks sharp. So this card's got a strong surface and decent corners for a 6. It's a little off-center, and that's likely what's keeping it from a 7. It's got a Pop of 62 with only 92 higher. I have no plans on upgrading it. Love this card, and I'm thrilled to have it in my collection. And then I didn't start this video off by saying when my favorite card would be, because they are all my favorites. But if I had to pick a favorite of the favorite, if that makes sense, This would be it. And is no surprise, it is also the oldest card in my collection because I'm big into history. And I think these are more than just cardboard. But this is a 1935 National Chickle Turk Edwards PSA 5.5. Now, earlier we talked about the $100,000 contract. Unfortunately for Mr. Edwards, he was a little bit behind that time. So coming out of college, he had 3 different contract offers from 3 different clubs. And what I found shocking was he chose the biggest. Good for him. And it was with the Boston Redskins. And they offered him $1,500 for 10 games. That's crazy. Most players nowadays make more than $1,500 in the first minute of the game. But that's neither here nor there. So Turk was a mountain of a man back then. He was 6'2" and he weighed 250 pounds. Now, nowadays that's nothing. But in the 30s, he stood out like the Rock of Gibraltar, right? Like the guy was just a man among boys. He played both sides of the ball. He earned All-Pro honors in all of his seasons except his last. And what was really sad and I guess painfully interesting to me was his playing career was cut short due to a knee injury, but not one that was suffered on the field. It was suffered during, get this, a coin toss. After the coin toss had been completed, Turk turned to run to the sidelines, but his cleat got stuck in the grass. He blew out his knee, and his football career was over. Sad story, sad ending to an amazing career for an amazing man and one of the greatest early players in the game. So this is a 5.5 PSA, as I said. Believe it or not, this is the only 5.5 in existence. It is a Pop 1 5.5. Comparing it to other PSA 6s I have, I think this is an easy 6 candidate. I'm not sure if I have the stones to crack and resub it, but I will tell you this, comparing this 1935 5.5 to some of the 1948 6s I have, this is as good or better. Great centering, great color. Of course, it's got some corner wear, but I would submit this as a resub any day of the week. So that's it. I really enjoyed this video. I love going through all this vintage stuff. I've got some more videos coming up where we're going to talk about more vintage, a couple more modern cards as well. I hope you enjoyed this. If you don't mind, I like to share this with as many people as possible. So subscribe, hit the like button, and let's share the wealth, or let's share the gospel of Football Card Hall of Fame investing with as many people as possible. So as always, happy collecting. Have a great day. Thank you for watching.